Hey, so it is currently minus 46 here in Alberta at the time of filming this, and we're all just trying not to freeze our tails off. So I figured what better time to talk about some color grading. So I'm a filmmaker, and particularly I do a lot of wedding films. And in the wedding film space, the how to color grade a wedding video and wedding film pack LUTs are literally everywhere you look. So I didn't really feel like I had anything to add to the conversation until recently, thanks to Dehancer. So I connected with Dehancer a while ago, and it's a plugin that's been on my radar for quite a while. And when the opportunity presented itself to test it out in kind of my realm of filmmaking, I finally sat back and thought, okay, maybe I do have something to add to the conversation of color grading wedding films. Now, soon enough, I'm going to post a full tutorial on using Dehancer to grade your wedding films, but for this video, I'm just going to be focusing on reviewing Dehancer as a whole. Now, just to be clear, Dehancer is not paying me. No money has exchanged hands. In fact, they actually asked if I would give a completely honest review, no matter the pros, cons, negatives, whatever they might be, because they just want to make a better product. So the wedding industry is generally filled with two things, either a very high-key, bright, and sharp look, or a very dark, moody, rustic look for most of the wedding films on the market. And if that's what you're going for, that is completely fine. But for a corner of YouTube that uses the word cinematic about as frequently as Canadians say I'm sorry, it's kind of interesting to me that one approach to color grading has not broken into mainstream wedding filmmaking, and that is film emulation. Now, when most people think of color grading their wedding film, they don't generally think about emulating film. But here's why I think they should. The further the wedding film industry progresses, the more words like cinematic, filmic, storytelling are all becoming increasingly commonplace. But I think that can actually detract from the words themselves. I find when the wedding industry uses those words, they're usually imagining something like a beautiful slow motion kiss, maybe a 2:1 aspect ratio, some big sprawling drone shots, some super shallow depth of field, but in reality, that's not what makes cinema cinematic. Cinema is telling a story, it's creating an atmosphere, and obviously, yes, one of the ways that's done is through cinematography. And don't even get me started on the cinematic trend in YouTube cinematography. But also that story is told through music and pacing and sound and dialogue and color. Yep, that's my dog. Color is a huge part of creating the tone and the narrative in which a film takes place. And a lot of times the way to do that is to shoot on film. Shooting on cameras like Panavision cameras or Reflex cameras. They just create a very specific look that a lot of times is the right look to tell your story. Shooting on film gives a specific feel, environment, tone, ambience to your story that a lot of times cannot be replicated on digital shooting. Think in recent years you have films like Past Lives, who tells this beautiful story of a very intimate relationship between a woman, her husband, and her longtime friend that she hasn't seen in decades. It's a very intimate, beautiful story that really is told through the eyes of characters, and if that film had been shot on digital, it just wouldn't have felt the same. It wouldn't have had the same impact. It wouldn't have had the same punch, and that's a feel that can't really be replicated on digital. Shooting on film can evoke memory and nostalgia and idealism and overall just beautiful colors, which is what most of us are striving for in our wedding films. But along with all that, film is also something else, and that is extremely expensive. And here's where Dehancer comes in. Dehancer offers its users, in my opinion, a more accurate and true-to-form emulation of the film process than any other product on the market. Film generally has a couple very specific characteristics. Think beautiful highlights, deep and vivid colors, organic blacks and shadows, beautiful skin tones, and so many others. And sure, you can recreate those results in a program like Resolve, but it's going to take you a couple of things. Number one, an incredibly high knowledge of detailed color grading and color correction. Number two, a huge amount of time. Number three, a bunch of either reference images or example images of different film stocks, or a metric ton of conversion LUTs to those specific film stocks. However, with Dehancer, all of that has already been done for you and put into one incredibly cohesive plugin. It has countless film stocks that have been meticulously emulated to their real-world counterparts, each with very distinct and very unique looks. It has the ability to adjust a plethora of settings, from your color density to your black and white points to your color head and printer lights. Dehancer just makes it incredibly easy to emulate properly the look of film. I actually wrote a couple of things down here that in my mind separate Dehancer from a lot of the other products online. The way it handles highlights and shadows, the smooth highlight roll off. Let's be honest, nothing matches the way that film handles highlights and shadows, but Dehancer is about as close as you can get. Look, in my opinion, a lot of the other products on the market don't actually handle highlights and shadows very well, which I think is what makes the filmic look the filmic look. They either make the highlights and shadows look too artificially compressed, or they just overblow everything. And what sucks about that is 9 times out of 10 you end up with something that looks like you just slapped a cheap 2383 LUT on there, or worse, you get something that looks like a garbage Instagram filter, and nobody wants that when they're trying to emulate film. I think another thing that separates Dehancer from a lot of the other products on the market is it just replicates skin tones so beautifully. A lot of the other products make them look artificial, too saturated, too contrasty. I think Dehancer handles skin tones beautifully. Another thing is halation and glow. The halation and glow in Dehancer feels like it was shot. It feels like it's because of light. It feels like it was coming from the sensor. Most of the other products on the internet, including the ones that come stock and Resolve, they just feel added. They feel like an overlay. They feel like something you decided to throw in for aesthetic purposes in the edit, and it just feels cheap. Number 4 is color density. Dehancer handles color density amazingly. It's a completely separate thing, and Dehancer knows that, and I really appreciate that. And finally, number 5, the biggest thing in my opinion that separates Dehancer from everything else on the market is its grain. Oh my god, its grain. I hate grain overlays. Hate them. They're all terrible. They all just look so separated. They look so unorganic. They look like they're just thrown onto footage. It just feels cheap. It doesn't feel authentic. Whereas Dehancer's film grain blows my mind every time. That's one of the biggest reasons I wanted this product, to be honest with you. The way Dehancer uses its algorithm to take your image and literally reproduce it with grain is incredible. It means that every adjustment to exposure, every adjustment to saturation, every adjustment period changes the grain structure of the image, and it feels like the image and the grain are melded. It doesn't feel separated. It doesn't feel unorganic. It feels real. It may be my favorite part of the whole plugin. No joke. So with that all being said, I have a couple of closing thoughts here and some tips and some tricks that I think might help. Number 1, Dehancer is not for every project. As somebody who works on wedding films, corporate work, narrative work, mini-series, short film. As somebody who works on all of those, I can tell you Dehancer is not the answer for every one of your projects. Dehancer has a very specific look, just like film has a very specific look. But I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, if film is the look you're going for in your project and you don't have the massive budget to get it done, Dehancer is as close as you're going to get. Number 2, it's a pricey product. There's really no getting around that. There's no ignoring the fact that it comes with a high price tag, but in my opinion, A, it's 100% worth it. B, it does what it does better than anything on the market. And C, if you're trying to get the look of film, if film is the right look for your project and you can't afford tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars in film stocks, this is the best you're going to get. And in my opinion, you know, $500 or $600 as opposed to $40,000 in film reels, it's really a no-brainer for me. Speaking of, if you're interested in purchasing Dehancer, if you go to the link in the description and click there and use the promo code ABUV10, that's ABUV10, you actually get a 10% discount on your purchase, and it helps me out a little bit too, so feel free to do that. And that actually brings me to my third thought on Dehancer, and that is, because it's a pricey product, if you're going to use it, please learn how to properly use it. It is unbelievably easy to go way too far and way too dramatic when you're trying to emulate film. And if you're going for that TikTok look of maximum halation, grain, wrecking the image, if that's the look you're going for, I say, hey, you know what? Go for it. But don't waste your money on a product that is not designed to do that. You could get that same result with a cheap LUT, a cheap power grade, or just a couple of filters thrown on there. That is not what Dehancer is for. Consider if you were actually going to shoot film for your project, what neg you would shoot on, what print film you would shoot on. If you're shooting in the middle of a park at 2 in the afternoon and the sun's beating down, don't shoot on 500T. You want to be shooting on something closer to 50D, which is what they would actually shoot on in a situation like that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Dehancer. I love this product so much. I think it's amazing. I think it's beautiful. I think it's given me something that I've really wanted for a long time and could never get. So if you're someone who really cares about your image, if you're someone who loves film, if you're somebody who wants to have that film look in your project, then I would 100% recommend Dehancer. I would just say learn how to use it properly, and you will thank yourself for purchasing this. Like, seriously, it is amazing. It does what it does better than any other product on the market. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's fantastic. And yeah, overall, would recommend.